Hey guys, Becca Scoops here. How are you guys doing? Let me turn down this music a little bit. How are you guys doing today? Hope you guys are doing well. I've been working on a video for you guys. Oh, let me pause that music. Sorry. I've been working on a video because I think it's really important for those of you that want to see justice for Dee Dee Blanchard, that have come to believe that everything we knew about this case was wrong, that we were sold a narrative, we were sold a story, not based on evidence. That's what I have concluded. And so I'm writing this script for this deep dive that Mitch and I are working on. And in the middle of it, I'm pulling up all this other evidence. And I thought, you know what? Let me give you guys a glimpse, just a little glimpse, because I think it's important to go over some of these things kind of in depth. And because they're interesting and because it totally backs up that we were sold a false narrative. We were sold this false narrative. The whole country was, so that she could get out in 8.5 years. It's unheard of in a first-degree murder case that the death penalty was on the table to get it all the way down to 8.5 years. What kind of extraordinary evidence did they have to say, you know what? Yeah, let's let her out because you know what? She was this victim. Now, many of you might not know, and many of you may know, that immediately after the crime, the community over in Springfield, Missouri, and I think she was a local kind of reporter, blogger named Megan Pack, had this blog called Thought Catalog. And Megan did an extraordinary job of just chronicling what happened in the aftermath. And this is a great source that sometimes we forget about because all of this other stuff gets in the way. But if you want to learn the truth about something, go back to the beginning and check out what people were saying. Because after all the documentaries and the Hulu series and all that, all anyone talks about is Munchausen by proxy. But that's not what was going on back then. That's not what was going on. In fact, that's not what was even going on with Gypsy Rose Blanchard herself. I'm going to play a clip of a prison. Well, she wasn't in prison. She was in the Waukesha County Jail. Gypsy's in the Waukesha County Jail. It's about 10 days after she's been arrested. And it's one of her first phone calls with her dad. It's either the first or second phone call. And Gypsy is going to describe for him what her defense is going to be. That she's met with her lawyer, she's spoken with her lawyer, and they've come up with a defense. All right, let's take a listen to that.
There's been a costume from October that I had posted in May. How is that relevant to anything? I have pictures of me as a princess too on there, but I don't know.
This first part here, just she's talking about those pictures. She's embarrassed. She's highly embarrassed. The one with the licking the knife and all of these cosplay, sexy images. She's worried her dad's seen them. That's what she's talking about here. But shortly, she's going to get into the defense.
Right. Yeah. Well, that'll come out. You'll be able to argue that.
Right.
You'll be able to explain all of that if need be. Okay.
And if he had told me, he's like, well, we have a plan, and we had talked about it, and our defense is going to be the battered spouse syndrome.
Our defense, I've talked with him about it, and our defense is going to be the battered spouse syndrome. Battered spouse syndrome.
And, knows what he's doing, and I put all my trust in him, and I know that he'll get me the least amount of time possible. And I've been looking up about a roundabout figure of how long prison time does manslaughter charge, because that's what he's kind of
manslaughter charge
going for, because the prosecutor came up and was talking about charging you with manslaughter at the end of all this.
The prosecutor came up and is thinking about charging you with manslaughter.
Years for manslaughter is the maximum.
Yeah. And so it's like, it can either be from 5 to 15 years. And I'm like, I could do that. At least it won't be 25 to life or something like that. But there's a lot of factors.
At least it won't be 25 to life or something like that.
That need to be taken into account with that as well. So it could be even less than 15.
Yeah.
There she said, back it up. She's going to say there's other things that need to be taken into account. But obviously, we're talking about battered spouse syndrome. This has nothing to do with Munchausen by proxy. This is domestic violence.
Count with that as well. So it could be even less than 15.
Yeah, that's right. So just hope for the best, baby.
Yeah, hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
But the good thing is it's not going to get, like, the conversations, I don't think it's going to get any worse than what was in those texts.
Yeah, that's right.
The conversation's not going to get any worse than what was in those texts. She's talking about the text messages between her and Nick. She's also highly embarrassed about that. She's well aware it doesn't look good for her, and she knows, she's assuming her dad's read them, and she's saying it's not going to get any worse than that. That's the worst part.
That was like some big doings they had there, so so yeah, if you know what they're doing for, you know your enemy.
Know your enemy.
And be a good offense.
And be a good offense.
Did you hear anything on the blood test?
Did you hear anything on the blood test? I don't know. There was these. I don't know if this is about her being pregnant or possibly pregnant. Again, this is 10 days after she's been arrested, and she was always trying to get pregnant. There's really nothing much in this prison phone call. The main point here is this battered spouse syndrome that I'm trying to make is that, look, if she feared for her life, if she thought that, and we're going to get into what that was, right? If she feared for her life, then she would have said what the trauma was, right? My mom, like she said in her memoir, my mom was trying to cut my throat. Let's look at that. Let's look at what she came up with years later. This is not in any prison emails. I'll show you what's in the prison emails about what she says about her mom. Even in her first interviews, all she says about her mom is she was controlling. She was controlling. She was controlling. Okay. But then when the memoir is being written, you can imagine the discussion. Well, what was it though? Like, you had to fear for your life. I mean, you don't, right? You don't, what was the final straw that you were so fearful that you had to do this? Well, she never was fearing for her life. She wanted to get out from under her mother's control. Had nothing to do with, Dee Dee wasn't making her sick. So here's the prison emails. Hold on a minute. Let me take that off for a minute. I got to take this down. Not the prison emails. Here's her memoir. Here's the memoir. Okay. By the time we got to the ENT to explore the problem of my squeaky voice, the doctors had been conditioned to not question. This is crazy. This is what she says. The doctors had been conditioned to not question such a knowledgeable, doting mother. Are you kidding me? You're going to an ENT, ear, nose, and throat specialist. Okay. Probably this isn't someone that's ever seen your mom. This is a specialist. You've been, what you're trying to say here is you've been referred to a specialist, right? They don't know who your mom is from anybody. They don't give a shit what your mom's going to say. These are highly trained physicians. Okay. They don't they've been conditioned. How were they conditioned if they didn't even know who she was? This is crazy. Or maybe they didn't want to face her attitude. Oh yeah, doctors are really, tame like that. They're scared. They're scared of people. The way family members did when they questioned her about my health. So a surgery was recommended to open up my throat and take a peek at my larynx. No biggie. Okay, look. The timing, there was one kind of a hint at this in part of the medical records. I can't remember it was. The timing is way off and there was no surgery scheduled. But this is what she says in the memoir years later. Obviously, she doesn't say this to Mike Stanfield, her lawyer. If this was the trauma, if this was the fear, she would have told him that immediately. She would have said, look, Mike, to her attorney, look, here's what happened. My mom was going to cut my throat. I thought I was going to die. She had been doing all these weird medical procedures on me for years. She had been making me ill for years. She didn't say that to him. You know how we know that? Because he was going to use the battered spouse defense. There was no talk initially of any of this Munchausen by proxy stuff. That comes a little bit later. And even after that, Gypsy never says in any interview, even when she gets out of prison, her initial interviews are all, oh, my mom was so controlling. In the prison emails, she writes to people, my mom was controlling. I can't stand being under someone's control. So she cites this because they had to talk about it to write the memoir. Well, you're going to have to come up with something. They probably didn't say that to her outright, but they were highly suggesting, look, what was it? What happened? I mean, you murdered your mom. What was the final straw? What was it? And she comes up with this story. I'd love to see the medical records of this. I'd love to see the dates corresponding with this happening with her murdering her mother. So because here's what she says in the memoir, then hysterical, I pleaded with her to reconsider the surgery. There was no discussion as usual. When I got home from that appointment with the ENT, I took 3 oxys and craved the fantasy world Nick and I lived in. I messaged him. Do you remember when I told you remember when you told me you'd protect me from people who want to hurt me? Yes, darling. Will you still protect me? Yes, Nick answered. Even from my mother, yes. That story is not mentioned to Mike Stanfield. We know this because he never talks about it. After she was arrested to get the death penalty off the table, they came up with this battered spouse syndrome, which is domestic violence. What domestic violence are they talking about? So let's go back to the beginning to Megan Pack and the thought catalog, because this is going to prove there was nothing like that going on. And it's going to bring up some hard questions for Gypsy Rose Blanchard that we need answered. Okay? Let's take a look at this. It's very interesting stuff. Megan Pack's thought catalog, June 16th. This is June 16th, one day after the murder. Okay. She writes, I was just emailed a tip regarding Gypsy. It was that she won the titled Olay Foundation Child of the Year Award back in 2007. She was noted as being 12 years old, which would have put her as being born in 1995. Now, here's my point with bringing this up. And plus, I'm just going through her blog, and that is like in real time capturing what they're finding out and how people that knew Gypsy come forward, and the only family member that comes up is this Bobby Petrie, and I'll get to him in a minute because it's troubling. It's not reliable information he gives. Okay. So here Dee Dee is lying about Gypsy's age for this Olay Foundation. Okay. Now, here's my point in this. This was never a case of Munchausen by proxy. And you're going to see it as I go along with these documents here from the thought catalog. Okay. It talks about this is what Dee Dee put in 2007. So in 2007, Dee Dee writes, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is 12 years old. Yet one of her friends says she has wisdom and compassion beyond her years. Multiple health issues don't stop Gypsy from encouraging and uplifting others. Before Hurricane Katrina caused Gypsy and her mother to relocate, Gypsy would talk at a university in New Orleans. Oh, this isn't what Dee Dee wrote. I'm sorry. This is what Megan Pack wrote. Would talk at a university in New Orleans on why we should help and love one another. Okay, so Gypsy was even talk at a university. I mean, yeah, they were scamming. They were on the scam. There's no doubt about it. Okay. The point here is why it's important to bring that out and not ignore that and not downplay that is because it's the truth. And if we're going to get anywhere in this case, pretending like that didn't happen isn't smart. Because once someone catches you in a lie, that's it. They're not going to listen to you anymore. Okay. As much as you want to cheerlead justice for Dee Dee, as I do too, because she didn't deserve to be murdered. She doesn't deserve to be made into a monster. And I truly believe she had mental health issues of her own that contributed to all of this, what she did. It wasn't because she was getting anything out of it. Did you see her at the time of her death? Wasn't like she was taking care of herself. It's not like she was out dating. It's not like she was out having great vacations on her own. No, it was for Gypsy. She did it for Gypsy. And Gypsy knows this. And we're going to get to the parts where Gypsy's mean to her mom. It's in here. Okay. Sorry, I get really passionate about this because Dee Dee doesn't deserve this. Okay. No one's all good or all bad. Well, there's some people that are pretty bad, like psychopaths, but generally speaking, most people have skeletons in their closet and yeah, they have issues. And that's why I, feel for Dee Dee because it's like, she's a real person, don't make her out to be this saint and don't make her out to be this monster. She's just like you and me. She's got issues, maybe our issues aren't her issues. Definitely. Maybe you would look at her and say, hey, I wouldn't do that. Yeah. Don't judge her though on that part because you don't know what was going through her mind. She really thought her daughter, and she was right, was ill. Right? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Here's another thing I wanted to bring up. Okay. A lot of you are talking about how Gypsy lied to her mom and that she couldn't walk. I don't believe that. I believe Gypsy's lying about that. I don't believe Gypsy had a seizure in a hospital bed. I know, and you guys can disagree with me, and I'm going to show you why I don't believe it. And this is another thing that has been troubling me that a lot of people have been saying, and I just want to give you my opinion on it, and you can have your opinion. So it came out, I think in the prison emails where Gypsy was saying, I don't know where it came out. I think in the prison emails. Anyways, it's going around this story that Gypsy was pretending she couldn't walk and her mom didn't know it, and their mom thought she was paralyzed. Okay, so that meant that had to mean, right, if that's true, that Gypsy wasn't walking around her mom at all. So when she was in the house, she wasn't walking. When they're out, obviously she's not walking. She's in the wheelchair. So you're talking for what? Up until I think she was what? I don't know, for years and years and years. The story is for years and years and years, she wasn't walking. Well, here's the legs of someone that doesn't walk. That's what happens when you don't walk. That's why Gypsy's case was so like they're looking at her legs and going, well, she's walking. Her muscles are there. Because when you cannot really move, when you're really paralyzed and you're not moving your legs, your muscles atrophy to that extent. That's what it looks like. So I think we need to rethink that story. And probably Dee Dee did know Gypsy could walk. Okay. I'm pretty sure she did because she was walking around the house. Why? How do I know she was walking around the house? Because she had no issues walking after the murder. It wasn't like, okay, you guys can say, oh, Gypsy feels like her legs are tired sometimes. That's fine. But that's different from looking like that and not ever using your legs. She was walking around the house because she had muscle tone. She wasn't completely atrophied. And don't bring up the type 2 fiber atrophy thing. I'll talk if you want me to talk about that later. That's probably part of the microdeletion, but it has nothing to do. It's just kind of low muscle tone. It's not to the degree of this. But if she was laying in bed and in a wheelchair, her legs would, if she was never moving them, they would look like this. All right. Let's move on from that. Okay. So, here's an interesting tidbit. This was from one day after the murder. I only met her once, but the way people talk about Gypsy, she was a little girl that everyone wanted best for. Hell, she even got Mandalorian armor donated to her, Boba Fett armor from Star Wars, pink and black. She was always cheerful from the way people talked. And Dee Dee was donating to the convention food time and just apparently a great person. Okay, these are these reports of Dee Dee being active in the community, donating food, being a part, and people saying she was a great person. So this is how they viewed Dee Dee, that she was involved. She would donate food. Okay, all right. Here's another tidbit. These are from people that knew them. A couple of years back, Gypsy showed up at her door. Now, this is when she goes to the hospital, but I think it's important. Let's read from this person's own words. This is from the person whose house she turned up at, which also gives rise to Gypsy's walking without any difficulty. And if she was in that wheelchair 24/7, she wouldn't have been able to do this. Showed up at her door late in the night, begged my husband to give her a ride to Mercy ER to check on her boyfriend who had gotten beaten up. My husband gave her a ride, and he said she talked about Hurricane Katrina and how they landed here, but she was walking and talking fine when she showed up at our door. So she was wearing a long wig. He remembers her childlike voice. My husband said she was frantic to get to Mercy, and now we wonder if this was a runaway attempt from her mother. So there's that. Okay, so she was easily walking and she was frantic to get to the ER to be with Dan Glidewell, who was one of her first boyfriends, paramours, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Another tidbit. Wow, we met this family talking about Gypsy and Dee Dee a few years back at the Ronald McDonald House in Kansas City. They were very nice, and my daughter and wife spent time with them. If this is true, Gypsy played it off very well and fooled a lot of people. Now, my point here is Gypsy claims after she's arrested, I didn't know what my mom was doing, which is a problem in a lot of ways. If you didn't know what your mom was doing, why did you murder her? Right? But you're going to find that these aren't the only people that say that Gypsy was playing along very well. Okay? Even a law enforcement officer is going to say it. So she was playing the part. They were scamming people. Don't judge Dee Dee. Like, don't say, oh, she's a horrible person. Look, I don't know what she was thinking. I don't think she was a horrible person because if she was doing it just for herself, she sure would have looked a lot damn better before she died at 48 years old. Right? She would have been spending that money on herself. She would have been doing a different kind of grift, not for Disney trips. I mean, what 40-year-old woman wants to go to Disney. I mean, seriously, maybe some do. I'm not saying I love Disney, but I'm just saying you'd want to do stuff for yourself. If you're being selfish and doing this scam grift for yourself, she was doing it because she knew her daughter was ill. She knew that. Did she make up stuff? Yeah, she did. I don't want to show you. You can't deny it. Okay. But we have to tell the whole truth if we're going to get this story out there, or people are going to start questioning this stuff. People that are real investigative reporters are going to dig into it, I hope. And so I want to be armed with all the truth. Okay. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Because the bottom line is Gypsy is a psychopath who lied about her mother having Munchausen by proxy. She had help with that lie. Okay. Her attorney and probably Christy Blanchard helped create that lie that she then went with. Remember, she says in prison emails, I didn't know about this. Oh, shoot. Forgot to bring that one up. I have it, though. It's going in my deep dive. She says there's a prison email where she says, until Mike told me about it, I didn't know the extent of what was going on. I didn't know this was going on, basically. Well, then why did you murder your mom if you didn't know what was going on? See, she can't critically think. When you say things like this, it's not going to make any sense. And this is where we're going to get her at in these kind of lies that she's telling. All right. Here's another one. This is from the deputy that went out to their North Volunteer Way home, the Habitat Humanity home, in 2009. Okay. So Gypsy would have been 18 at the time. All right. So this isn't a little Gypsy with mom manipulating her. This is an 18-year-old Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Okay. When confronted, this is when someone called CPS on them. When confronted about the inconsistent information Dee Dee had provided to the 911 caller, Dee Dee told the deputy that she was divorced. Oh, I think this was, wait. Dee Dee told the deputy she and her daughter came to Springfield. This might have been from someone broke into the house. Okay, I think that's what this is, because Dee Dee had provided to the 911 caller. And this was, yeah. The deputy determined based on Social Security that Gypsy was 18 years old. Okay. The inconsistent information Dee Dee had provided to the 911 caller. Dee Dee told the deputy that she was divorced and she had changed her daughter's information so that her ex-husband would not be able to find them. Dee Dee told the deputy she was afraid of her ex-husband, according to the report. The deputy wrote in his report that Gypsy, quote, does suffer from some type of mental handicap. Well, what gave him that idea? Okay. Remember the last one up here, Gypsy played it off very well and fooled a lot of people at the Ronald McDonald House. Okay. There's one part where Gypsy is going to these conventions, these sci-fi conventions, and she's caught in the room with another man. And the person that was there, the eyewitness, said it looked like she was ready to get intimate with him. And then the woman writes, if you know what I mean. Dee Dee made Gypsy apologize to the convention staff. When I talked to Gypsy later, she said all she wanted was to be a real girl and fall in love. Not my mom's making me sick, not she's going to kill me, not, right? Megan Pack writes, that's so sad. This is Facebook. They're messaging. I wish I would have questioned more. I just thought she was a sick little girl. A couple of us talked with Dee Dee via Facebook and told her that she needed to let Gypsy live more freely. It got us blocked. Gypsy, and here's probably why. Listen to this next statement. Gypsy hit on other men in the group via Facebook. Men in their 30s and 40s. What? She was like 18 years old, 19 years old. Now, there's two reasons Dee Dee could have blocked these people. Number one, of course, because we have to live in the truth. It could have been Dee Dee was like, look, I don't want anyone questioning us. I don't want to be caught. I've done things I'm not proud of. I've gotten things based on wrong statements about my daughter's health, and I'm blocking them. Or I got this crazy daughter who's like sexually inappropriate and is like hitting on all these guys on Facebook in their 30s and 40s. Don't tell me what to do with my daughter. Maybe a little of both. You be the judge. Now, here is an example of Gypsy's email from 2021 in prison. Okay. Here's where she's going to talk about what motivated her to do the crime. The truth is, I was extremely desperate to get out from under my mother's control. And I really did think it was my only way out. Now, if I murdered someone because I feared for my life, I thought they were making me ill, I thought they were going to get a surgery that my throat could be cut, I would have written, the truth is, I was extremely frightened and feared for my life. I thought she was going to kill me. It was me or her. This was my only way out. See, I can't stand the lies. Just tell the truth. Tell the truth. You wanted to go be with men. You want there's many other women, Gypsy, that have done exactly what you've done. They're in prison for life, by the way. They didn't get out. You can't be retried for this murder. So why don't you just tell the truth? Okay. As I wanted to point out here, Megan Pack's thought catalog. This is from the first few days after the crime. Okay. This is very insightful from Aaliyah Woodmansey. You'll remember Aaliyah was Gypsy's across the street friend. If you watch the Hulu, she's the blonde girl who was one of Gypsy's close friends. Gypsy writes to Aaliyah a lot. Aaliyah was a few years older. Gypsy kind of looked up to her. She was pretty. She had boyfriends. This is what the life Gypsy wanted. She saw Aaliyah going out with boys. Oh, Gypsy this is what she craved, right? Let's hear what Aaliyah has to say right after the murder. Your article is incredible, very matter of fact. She's writing to Megan Pack. I want people to see that I was incredibly close to Gypsy, and even in October, she was telling me she was 18. So much for I didn't know my age. I don't and here's the part I really want you guys to think about. I don't believe all blame should be put onto Dee Dee. Now, this is coming from someone who knows Gypsy, who's corresponded with Gypsy, right? Very insightful from Aaliyah Woodmansey. Very brave of her to say, because at this point, people are like, oh, what was going on with that woman? I'm not saying this to convict Gypsy, but this is just another piece of information that people should notice. She goes on to talk about the incident when Gypsy ran away. And what did Gypsy do? Gypsy told Aaliyah, wrongly lied to her and said, oh, it's this pedophile. Okay. It made Aaliyah question Gypsy's character and morals. And that's why she came forward and said, I don't think this should be all put on Dee Dee. Like she knew who Gypsy was, so to speak, and she's thinking, let's be careful with that. Here's October 2014. Gypsy began messaging her, Aaliyah, through a secret Facebook account under the name Emma Rose. Hi, Aaliyah, it's Gypsy, the first post read. This is my personal account. My mom is still trying to kill me? No, my mom is still overprotective, so she don't know about this account. And then she talks about Nick. And here's what was on her mind. Not Aaliyah, I'm scared. My mom, is batshit crazy. Can you help me? Can you maybe I can walk. I'm sorry. I was, we were like, I don't know what's going on. I think she's making me whatever, right? If that was the truth. But what does she go into? She gushes about this relationship with Nick Godejohn and how they're going to get married. And here's what their kids' names are going to be. She was already plotting her mom's murder at this point. Battered wife syndrome. My ass. Here's another thing where Gypsy admits she knew that she was not disabled, that she was doing the scam. When Gypsy talked to me, this is from another eyewitness, she told me that she hated how her mom treated her and that she was not disabled, only seemed so. Gypsy claims, I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea, I didn't know my mom was, I didn't know my mom was doing that Munchausen thing. No, she knew she wasn't disabled, and only she knew it was a scam. She knew it was a game. This is about a couple that Dee Dee was trying to help them get a Habitat for Humanity house. They were uncomfortable with it. Dee Dee mentioned that we could always claim disability to get help. Blank and I are disabled, but we didn't feel it right to play upon those outwardly to most people around us. Dee Dee and Gypsy seem close and happy. Here's another little tidbit you're going to love. But when it was just me, this is somebody, their friend, an eyewitness who saw them, Gypsy showed a darker and secretive side. This is just after the murder. So these are truthful. These are people just coming forward of their observations before there's any narrative that can get spread, right? Outwardly to most people around us, Dee Dee and Gypsy seemed close and happy. When it was just me, Gypsy showed a darker and secretive side, yelled at her mom at one point. It was totally an uncomfortable situation, so I pulled away. Later, at a blank, Gypsy told me that she would do anything to get away from her mom, that she was being smothered and just wanted to live a normal life. She was so sweet, kind of scary when mad, though. Kind of scary when mad, though. So this situation stuck in this person's mind about Gypsy's dark side and how she yelled at her moms. Like it was such a shock to this person when Gypsy yelled at her mom with whatever way she was yelling at her. It was like, whoa. Like, what's going on over there? What's that about? They didn't like it. They pulled away from them. Here's when Gypsy knows her real age. This is what Aaliyah was referring to. She writes to Aaliyah, can I tell you a secret? Back in 2011, I ran away from home. I met a pedophile online. This is like Gypsy lying about getting raped in prison. This is where she is a habitual liar. She can't help it. She has to lie about everything. And so here she's calling Dan Glidewell a pedophile. Yeah, he was a lot older than her, no doubt, but she was of legal age. And she knew she was of legal age because she had the ID. They all knew it. All right, let's get a little bit into what people were saying right after the murder about Dee Dee and this so-called Munchausen. How did that happen? When did it happen? Okay, the first person to opine is this Dr. Ann Rose. She was this head of the psychology department at Missouri State University. So this is someone that knows a little bit about psychology. It's a disorder where a person intentionally creates symptoms in another person. Here's what Rose said. While some of Dee Dee Blanchard's actions seem like Munchausen by proxy, Rose said her behavior doesn't fit the bill for the disease. For Munchausen by proxy to be present, we say there cannot be monetary gain involved. There cannot be monetary gain involved. The other possible option for this is malingering. And malingering is just when someone intentionally creates symptoms to gain something. Malingering is not a mental illness. Now, remember Gypsy's expert, Dr. Mark Feldman? Well, let's go ahead and discredit him a little bit more, shall we? Try to find where that one is. Okay. So back in that first week, Dr. Mark Feldman did opine. He looked it up, okay? Because he's so-called the Munchausen by proxy expert. But here's why he got it wrong. And it's in Megan Pack's thought catalog, why he got it wrong. This is a great find. Because Gypsy uses this, and her cult members use this, Dr. Mark Feldman, all the time. Dr. Feldman, this is back right after the murder, said he became aware of the story possibly being connected to Munchausen by proxy, but initially dismissed it, as Munchausen by proxy is often not connected to murder. He's like, well, that doesn't make sense because Munchausen people don't murder. Okay. The first thing he thought. He also mentioned that Gypsy's appearance convinced him that she was probably actually sick or disabled. Well, what do you know? She was sick. And now that discredits his whole diagnosis. He based his diagnosis on thinking Gypsy was 100% well, no health problems. He initially dismissed Munchausen because he said, I thought she was probably really sick. So Munchausen wouldn't be apply if she was really sick. So Dr. Mark Feldman's diagnosis of Dee Dee Blanchard having Munchausen by proxy was based on falsely believing Gypsy was not ill. Someone needs to get a hold of Dr. Mark Feldman and tell him Gypsy was diagnosed with a rare chromosomal disorder, a microdeletion, and that most of the symptoms, if not all of the symptoms she displayed her whole life, basically back up all the surgeries, the few surgeries she had. Yeah, I think she had multiple eye surgeries, okay? But the rest of her body, what she said she needs, the ones that were in question, the 4 that are in question, one's a muscle biopsy. The others are just the salivary glands, the feeding tube, and the laparoscopic procedure, the Nissan fundoplication for the heartburn issue. So if Dee Dee had Munchausen, she wouldn't been not very good at it. Right? I mean, no, like, high salt level, no, like extreme fever. Like she hasn't been being rushed into the ER with, oh my, on the brink of death. Yeah. All right. I want to go over, before I end here, because this is getting kind of long, I want to go over a section of one of Mitch and I's deep dives. It's a 6th secret about Gypsy Rose Blanchard. This is going to explain about how they came up with that defense for her and why it's bogus. Okay, so let's take a listen to that real quick. Just 2 days after Gypsy's arrest, the local newspaper, the Springfield News Leader, came out with this article titled Was Gypsy Blanchard a victim of Munchausen by proxy? The article reads, quote, so droves of captivated readers step forward like amateur sleuths with this diagnosis, Munchausen by proxy. It was posted everywhere by people reading the stories and making judgment about what was happening, end quote. That's when attorney Mike Stanfield decided the defense strategy of battered spouse syndrome wouldn't work. And he sent his paralegal to engage with the public on social media to test this novel defense strategy from internet sleuths. This notion that Dee Dee Blanchard had a mental disorder called Munchausen by proxy. Gypsy's attorney, Mike Stanfield, sends his paralegal, who goes online under the name Patty Lou. Patty Lou tests the idea on forums and Facebook pages that Dee Dee Blanchard was causing Gypsy harm, that she had a condition called Munchausen by proxy. One commentator responded to this paralegal named Patty Lou, writing, so before they even go with the Munchausen by proxy defense, Mike tests it. He beta tests it on social media to see if it's going to work. Well, if it's the truth, why do you need to beta test it on social media? Right? So he sends his paralegal out, and this is what one commentator said to, actually, of course, they went with it, but some people did fight back and say, wait a minute, I'm really not trying to bash family or friends, but I find it really disturbing that now all of a sudden you guys want to say that Gypsy was a victim of mental abuse from Dee Dee, making her be ill. But not one of you stepped forward with this info until it was too late. And now you want us that didn't know them to have sympathy for Gypsy. To some degree, we do, but not as far as to say she didn't have any other choice. She could have asked for help. I do agree that if her mom made her fake it, then to a point, like let's say 12 years old, she wouldn't be able to get help. But believe me, I have a 12-year-old and they are very capable of telling someone they need help. I do pray for the family and friends and for Gypsy, but not for the reasons some of you want. It's a sick situation all the way around. Patty Lou responded, she's my client. Thanks for posting this. We're trying to get views of local people. In another post, Patty Lou confirms she's working for Mike and they are his paralegal. Another key player who was allegedly helping push the Dee Dee Blanchard was a monster narrative was Gypsy's stepmom, Christy Blanchard. According to sources who are, we'll get into that in another video, but I just wanted you guys to see that how this developed in real time. Initially, there was no Munchausen by proxy. In fact, Mike Stanfield was baffled, concerned. The death penalty was on the table. We need to come up with something. Let's see. So he confers with his client. What happened? Why did you do it? And out of that conversation, what did they come up with? Munchausen by, oh, no. Out of that conversation, they come up with battered spouse syndrome. That means it wasn't on her mind. It didn't come from her. And if it didn't come from her, then she had no reason to murder her mother. If she didn't know her, if supposedly it's true that Munchausen by proxy is true, if it's supposedly true, then she knew about it before because that's why she killed her. Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because you've got Gypsy's cult members running around on TikTok saying stupid stuff. And I hear it. I don't want to hear it. And I hear it and I go, okay, look, let's just make this video and just get this out there and put this to bed once and for all. By the way, the battered spouse syndrome, you would need to show imminent threat of like you're in fear for your life also. You have to show, you know, I mean it's a syndrome. So there's experts. If a woman really has battered spouse syndrome, then yeah, I mean I'm all for if she murdered her husband and it was in self-defense, good, good. If truly that's what happened. But it just shows you how desperate they were because Gypsy had no reason to kill her mother. So she had to pull something up, and Mike had to come up with something. And that's what they came up with initially until the internet did the internet thing and people were like, oh, well, maybe her mom had Munchausen. And then that gets back to Mike and Christy and all of them. And they're like, yeah. And then that's Dr. Mark Feldman, with looking it up on the internet, and he makes a bad assumption because he assumed Gypsy was not ill when she was. She had a chromosomal defect that was diagnosed in 2011. And again, if Dee Dee had Munchausen, she sure wasn't good at it. Because Gypsy didn't get anywhere near the procedure she claims to have gotten or the surgery she claims to have gotten. And never once did you see Gypsy like being rushed to the ER. Oh my God, she's on the verge of death. No, it was a scam. It was a grift. Okay. And no one should be stabbed 17 times over a grift or a scam when they're trying to help their kid have a good life. Maybe it's not the best way to get your kid a good life. All right. And yeah, maybe there were some issues with Dee Dee mentally, but I want to say one last thing about abuse. No one's childhood is perfect. No one's childhood is perfect. Was Gypsy's childhood perfect? No. No one's childhood is perfect. People like, well, wasn't that abuse when, yeah, there's levels of abuse. It's not just black and white. You know what I mean? You can say when you were bullied in school that was abusive, or you can say that, one of your cousins or your aunt or your dad used to call you fat and growing up and you felt bullied and that was abusive. That's the same thing with Gypsy. Yes. I'm not going to ever say, oh my God, Dee Dee was a saint and everything she did was, there's things that happen to everyone's childhood where it could be labeled somewhat abusive or, right? I mean, yes, how she went about, and maybe Dee Dee had some kind of a mental thing where she felt all alone and isolated, and she was frightened out of her wits end that her daughter had some kind of an illness because they told her she did, and she knew she did. And so she was trying to show her this best life. Maybe in her mind, Gypsy was going to die at a young age. Maybe, I don't know. All I know is she didn't do it for herself. There's no indication whatever Dee Dee did to, embellish Gypsy's illnesses, that she did it so that she would benefit. The only person that benefited was Gypsy Rose Blanchard. So I'm tired of that whole abuse thing because she did not fear for her life. That's ridiculous. And I'm done with that. All right, guys, I'm sorry I get a little bit heated with this stuff, but I do because I want to get this out to the mainstream media. Now, if you have emailed me, I have not emailed you back yet because I had to take a couple days off for mental health and I was so tired, and I'm going to get back to all your emails this evening and tomorrow. I promise. All right. This is almost an hour long, so I'm going to stop talking and I will get back to all of your emails. If you'd like to help with the campaign, in any way, if you have a little bit of time, we're going to create some kind of a committee or something just to organize it better. Please email me at beccascoops.com. If you like this video and you don't mind me yelling at you, then think about subscribing to Becca Scoops. All right. And for those of you that are really on the Justice for Dee Dee campaign, consider becoming a member to my channel. So appreciate it so much. All of you. You guys have no idea how much I appreciate it. It humbles me. It humbles me, the degree of passion you guys have and the degree of kindness you've shown my channel. Yeah, I'm totally humbled by it. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me, and Becca Scoops out.